we spent so much time thinking about roguelike games and playing them and so on. It's like I think it's what's so fundamentally compelling about them. It makes them like true to life in a way. Like, what's life if not trying to kind of control the thing?
Hey everybody, welcome back to PlayStation Underground. You got your old pal Justin here, joined by my good pal Tim, and joined by our mutually good pal Greg Kasavin from Supergiant Games. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
So we're really excited here to be talking about Hades, a game that is finally coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on August 13th. I'm a big fan of your studio. I'm a big fan of this game, and I'm excited to see this game running on a PlayStation 5. Greg, first of all, just congratulations on the excellent reception to the game, and congratulations on getting it out to PlayStation here in not too long. We're really excited to finally have it.
Yeah, thanks so much. We are really, really excited as well to be back on PlayStation very soon here. It's been a wild ride with Hades for sure. I was telling you a bit before, we certainly could not have fully anticipated the degree to which, so many folks would be so excited about this game. So yeah, we like nothing better than to allow even more folks out there to be able to play and enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for them to get their hands on it too. So what we're seeing here is a run. I think this is somewhere around halfway through, a kind of a mid-game run. I mean, not that defining beating the game is kind of a tricky proposition with Hades, but you've got a few clears under your belt here. I saw that we did some stuff with the mirror at the beginning. That's kind of your permanent upgrades that you can unlock. And we
started with the Poseidon boon, which is a good start in my book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those Poseidon boons are great. And we're rocking the shield, which I think is a great choice. I think my first clear in this game ever was with the shield, so I got a soft spot for that one. Greg, do you have any favorite weapons when you play the game?
Yeah, the favorite weapon is so hard for me because we just kind of wanted them to all be able to be someone's favorite. I think I personally have a soft spot for the blade, the starting weapon, but that's probably a bit of development nostalgia on my part, just because it's the one that he's always had. Hades started in early access, so it actually started off. It's a weapon that got a lot stronger over the course of development, in part because it ends up having some like pretty significant like kind of built-in disadvantages because it has no ranged component. Even with the shield here, you could chuck that thing and like deal with enemies from far away, but with the blade you always have to get in their face. But I do like that about it. I like that kind of play style myself, coming from my whatever fighting game background of wanting to play kind of more aggressively.
Yeah, I get that a lot in all of Supergiant's games. Actually, I think that one thing that the team does really well is your personal tastes come into the game. Like they really shine through. You can see kind of like you mentioned your taste for fighting games in a lot of the games that you put out. And there was like when Pyre came out, there was kind of an NBA Jam kind of element to it. Like your inspirations are always pretty clear, and they always shine through really well. And Hades, I think, just is such a great distillation of what makes so many different types of genres great. And then your writing just ties it all together and makes it so compelling to want to go back and play the game over and over and over to see what's going to happen. You guys really perfected that loop of playing the game, then finding out what's happening in the House of Hades, and then going out on another run and just kind of back and forth, and the game never really wanting to let you go. How much iteration did it take to kind of perfect that loop?
Yeah, I mean, it took the entire length of development of like over 3 years. I would say we were quite honestly, we were tweaking a lot of those aspects down to the very, very end and focused on them from the very beginning. One of the big things we wanted to accomplish with this game was to kind of make the pleasures of roguelike games, these games where you die and start over from the beginning each time, and make them a bit more like palatable, I guess, even to a wider range of players, because roguelike games are known often for their brutal difficulty, and Hades is not an easy game, I think, according to most people, but we wanted to have things there to make it so that you like wouldn't get frustrated and kind of rage quit out, as can sometimes be the case in the style of game. And the entire, like, the premise of the story, like the whole story component, is partly in service of that, right? It's just one more reason for you to hopefully not be super frustrated when you lose, because you're gonna get to meet your pals back in the House of Hades and find out what's going on and all this kind of stuff. So we were really focused on trying to, like, reduce how frustrating it would normally be when you die in this game. And yeah, that's something we were working on all the way through.
Yeah, I think from a player standpoint, I think what I see as a huge success with Hades and how it was more palatable in a lot of ways from my perspective is, like, the amount of choice that your team is given players is huge. From, like, we saw it as we went into this room, there's oftentimes multiple exits, and you can choose what kind of, reward you're looking for at the end of a room. Or when you do get, a new boon, you can choose which one of three and just really compare and contrast. And so I think that's really makes it very palatable. But I'm just curious how, from, development standpoint, you kind of had, like, threaded that needle between giving players choice, but also leaving a lot up to that classic, roguelike kind of RNG.
Yeah, the roguelikes, I think, like from a cosmic level, they're like a battle against randomness between you and the player. Like, as a player, you really want the randomness to just, you wish you could just go away. You want everything to go your way. You want, every kind of best skill and ability to come your way. But of course, the randomness is what makes roguelike games so compelling, because every time you play, it's different. There's different encounters, there's different options, and you end up with, like, a different so-called character build, your abilities and all that stuff. So we were really interested in giving players kind of as significant of a degree of choice as we could, without making it so that there's, like, a roteness to, without making it so that you're just sort of denied the pleasurable part of the randomness, right? Where unexpected things can happen. And I think that's, like, we spent so much time thinking about roguelike games and playing them and so on. It's like, I think it's what's so fundamentally compelling about them. It makes them, like, true to life in a way. Like, what's life if not trying to kind of control the things that we can't control, right? Trying to create routine out of chaos and that sort of thing. So that's where roguelikes, I think, can, like, really ring true for people. And so giving players choices, it just makes the moment-to-moment play more interesting, and it makes the randomness feel less frustrating than it might otherwise, because, in many cases, it's kind of like a pick your poison situation, instead of just, like, being forced to deal with something that you had no sense of control over at all.
Yeah. Well, as Tim alluded to, you guys thread that needle really, really well. That's one thing that's interesting about roguelikes is that in many cases it's about the player getting better, and that's the progression in the game, is like your skill leveling up. Yeah. But there are multiple levels of that with Hades. There's, yes, you getting more technically proficient with the game and with the different weapons and finding a playstyle that suits you. But then there's things like learning which boons work best together and which ones suit which types of playstyle, all the way up until when you get to the really advanced stuff, learning which boons to pick up to open up the possibility of you getting a specific duo boon or a legendary boon that you're looking for later. The game just, like, it gets as deep as you want it to, and I think that's the best kind of like, infinitely replayable game. So yeah, kudos on just nailing that. So yeah, I don't know if there are any particular boons or like boon combinations or duo boons or legendary boons that, Greg, you see the community kind of gravitating towards the most, or do you feel like it's kind of more an even distribution?
Yeah, one of the things we looked for a lot in early access, because Hades spent a good couple of years in early access getting tons of feedback from our player community across all aspects of the game, including certainly the balance and things like the boons. We would look for, what are the boons that everybody's picking or nobody's picking, right, and stuff like that. And sometimes the data would say one thing, and player impressions and our own experiences would tell a different story. And we're just kind of we want to make sure that the choices presented are interesting, and there are few, if any, kind of no-brainer picks across the game. Though there are, depending on like the type of weapon or even the type of run that players are going for, certainly they're going to be like targeting certain specific boons. Like we have a hardcore speedrunning community and stuff like that, and they know exactly what they want, right?
Yeah.
There's a run I saw, a speed run of so-called a fresh file speed run, meaning the player's going to clear the game on the very first run as quickly as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that player is targeting a boon called Merciful End, which is a duo between Ares and Athena, that kind of synergizes really well with Athena's dash. With her dash boon, which is also very powerful and quite popular.
Boon. Yeah.
I think I saw that video that you're referring to. I think I saw a video of you and Amir commentating over that, right?
Yeah, that's the one. It's on IGN. It was really impressive for us to see. I think the player cleared it in only about 20 minutes or something like that. And you're very the player has very few advantages on a fresh file. But we did decide, we had to ask ourselves that question, like, should it even be physically possible to clear the game on the first run? We decided yes. Like, however unlikely it should be possible, and the story accounts for it and stuff like that. So it was really cool to see someone not just pull it off, but pull it off extremely quickly.
That's another thing that is so incredible about this game is the game, like, it knows things that you've done or things that you haven't done to an almost unsettling degree. How... I don't know how to ask the question that I have in my mind right now, but like, how did you come up with all of the different permutations, all of the different ways that the game can track, like all of the different things that you've done? Like if you have a streak going for a long time, like a win streak going for a long time, and then you lose, like the next time you see, I think it's Hermes, he'll comment on it, like lots of cool stuff like that. How did you implement all that?
Yeah, it would, so we certainly implemented all that stuff over time, and it really flowed from the individual character personalities and from our broader desire to, like, all of our games have strived to be reactive in some way and to kind of pay attention to the player. Like paying attention to the small stuff a player does, I think when games do that, it tends to be like really, it just feels good. You feel noticed and seen in a good way. It's like my analogy is like when somebody says, "Hey, nice shoes" or "nice haircut" or something like that. It's like it's a small thing, but when somebody pays attention to some small way in which you've changed or something like that and pays it a compliment, feels good. So we try to fill our games with stuff like that, and a lot of those ideas flowed from the specific characterizations. So, we have Ares, the god of war. He likes his violence. He likes his destruction. So he's a guy who knows all about your weapons, who knows all about the stuff you're killing, how much stuff you're killing, and so on. But someone like Hermes, he's the god of swiftness and travel. We're like, oh, this guy's the god of speedrunning. He's going to pay attention to how quickly you clear the game, and you can turn on like a gameplay timer to time yourself. He'll talk about things like that and stuff as well. So it was just really fun to come up with those ideas that felt specific to the different characters, instead of it being this sort of one size fits all thing where like, if every character commented on the speed at which you cleared the game, it wouldn't feel particularly interesting, I think. But Hermes talking about it like, well, that's just one of his hobbies. So yeah, we just kind of, from playing the game ourselves, from watching other people play, there was kind of no shortage of those types of ideas throughout development, and we would jam as many of them in as we could, and implementing them individually was like fairly... An individual thing like that was not particularly hard. It's just kind of the sheer volume over time that added up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw, obviously, we're in sort of the second area now and defeated Meg and moved on. But I'm curious, one thing to your point was that kept the game really fresh, and like it was noticing me is, every time you would fight Meg, she might be, back in the House of Hades, and she'd comment on how the battle went, and that battle would even change. That first boss battle would change form. So what could you say, Greg, about like the decision behind like, whether to have players do the same boss battles again versus letting them skip them, and what kind of decisions went into that?
Yeah, Meg was like a really important character from that standpoint you just mentioned. She was the one who I think in a lot of ways like very concisely expresses a lot of our goals with the game. This idea that the bosses are going to remember you, and your 20th time fighting a boss in a game is not going to feel the same as your first time fighting a boss, and why shouldn't the game be self-aware about that? We did want for players to like kind of go through the structure, like as they're, not
nice.
Oh yeah, curse of drowning can be a fun one. We wanted players to go through the structure each time because the game is like even thematically, about this battle out of hell from the very bottom to the very top. So the structure was going to remain the same, but we wanted there to be a lot of surprises that could happen along the way. And it's kind of ties back to some of the stuff I was saying before, that there's some stuff that can be predictable about it. The shape of the run can be similar from one playthrough to the next, but within that, hopefully a lot of different surprises can happen. And we wanted for players to encounter the same bosses for the most part, at least, in part so we could develop those like relationships and kind of have those mix-ups in the encounters with them. It's one of the advantages, I think, that like a game like this, or it's one of the things that makes this game unique, I suppose, in comparison to the standard like kind of single player adventure where you're blowing through levels, you're mowing down bosses, you kill them, they're out of the story, right? Whereas in our game, like you get to just run into some of these characters over and over. It can really deepen the relationships and get to some really fun types of interactions that wouldn't make sense in a game where you spent less time with these types of characters. I'm thinking about like Theseus, one of the later characters we encounter. There were all kinds of considerations like that, I think, as we were working on it.
Yeah, on that note, one other thing that I think must have just been so much fun for you specifically, Greg, is the idea of getting to create a story with all of these characters, all of these kind of legendary characters who have their own mythologies around them. How much, like, have you been a Greek mythology buff for a long time, or did you have to do a lot of studying as you were putting this together? And just what was it like being able to kind of craft your own story featuring all of these characters?
Yeah, it was a real it felt like an honor. It felt like something I went into it with there's aspects of it that are intimidating for sure, because Greek myth it's legendary, and it's been adapted in many fantastic works of media, including games, right? God of War series, for example. So we had to ask ourselves, like, what business do we even have making a game inspired by Greek myth? But I have been in love with Greek myth since I was a little kid, like 6 or 7 years old. It's like when I got my first book based on Greek myth. I actually have it right here near me. But I had to do I still had to do a ton of like specific research working on the story and the writing of this game. Like I had, despite thinking I was no slouch when it came to Greek myth, I had never heard of Zagreus, the protagonist character, prior to working on this game. Some player, which I don't think is that uncommon, like a lot of players assume that he's a character that we made up, and it's like, nope, he's from mythology, and we discovered that according to some versions of mythology, Hades had a son, and that idea was so compelling to us that we wanted to make a whole game around it and kind of figure out what was the real deal behind this guy and how does he fit into the myths that are known about Hades. And for me personally, like being able to kind of bring in some of the heroes of Greek myth, a character like Achilles, for example, and then also some of these lesser known so-called chthonic gods, these gods of the underworld like Nyx and Thanatos, who I couldn't tell you why they're portrayed so infrequently in adaptations of Greek myth, because they're super fascinating, I think. But yeah, we kind of saw, we felt that there was this angle that we hadn't seen done that much before, of like playing into the part where the Olympians are this big dysfunctional family. They're just kind of, they're gods, but in some respects are not so different from the rest of us, and that they're no strangers to, kind of getting frustrated with their family members or whatever, kind of bickering about petty stuff, like this kind of very human, mundane stuff that we're all used to. And that felt like we wanted to explore that through this story of Hades and his son.
Yeah, I would, from my humble perspective, mission accomplished, because not only did that shed light on some lesser-known characters, but it made the whole world feel really fresh again of Greek mythology, because, you're introducing folks, characters from Greek myth that, folks might be less familiar with. I also wanted to note how edge of my seat I've been watching this run, because the player has been like really threading the needle here, and I saw we popped like a death defied here at the beginning of this fight, but this has been really exciting.
Yeah, we're up against the old Lernian Bone Hydra, who is the Hydra is the second biome boss, and when we first launched in early access, this was as much game as we had. So this was essentially the final boss in the very first version of the game that we released, and we had to build out all the rest. And
there's a great example of the game kind of evolving as you play it more with this boss specifically. I won't spoil it here, but after you've faced that boss a few times, just pay attention to what happens. Zagreus has a lot of fun in this game, and he acknowledges frequently the fact that he's doing this over and over and over again, and I love that you guys just really leaned into that side of it.
Thank you. It's an example of the kind of thing. It's like, hey, the way Zagreus is going to feel about the Lernian Bone Hydra after encountering the Hydra dozens of times, he's going to feel different about the Hydra after a while. So just like being able to ask ourselves, how would he feel about the Hydra, and have him speak to that is a lot of fun. And it went over. Nice and cool. Players seem to really enjoy it too. So
I love it. Well, we're just entering Elysium here. I think that we're gonna shut things down here shortly. Here, we don't want to spoil kind of the final boss of the game once we get up to that point. But real quick, this is coming to PlayStation 5 and PS4. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about just the PlayStation version of the game? Like, what's the resolution we're looking at on PS5, and any other features that you're implementing?
Yeah, we have Hades running here in 4K on the PS5. It's nice. Target 60 FPS on both PS4 and PS5. It's 1080p on PS4. It should run great. Feel great. We, there's a big focus for us on just having the action feel as tight and responsive as possible. And it just I think inherently with the DualSense controller on PS5, it's just kind of makes every game feel better, I think, just automatically. It's such a great controller.
I think you've got a fun thing going on with the light bar. Like it's the color of the god that you're talking to, right?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's right. Each god that you talk to, the light bar will kind of light up in accordance with their particular color choice. And there are a few bits of DualSense kind of extra juice here and there, petting Cerberus and all that. Cerberus is a gigantic dog, so you'll feel the intensity of the petting when you're kind of up in Cerberus's face. But that's always a treat between runs.
I'm going to sink 80 more hours into the game just so I can feel what it's like to pet Cerberus.
Well, you won't need 80 hours for that particular interaction.
It'll be 80 hours of just petting Cerberus.
Yeah, that's
let's be clear. This is Hades. It's coming to PS4 and PS5 on August 13th. Tim, thanks for helping host this interview. Greg, thanks so much for taking the time. Anything else you want to say to the PlayStation fans out there before we let you go?
We're just really grateful for